Well, man, so groovy to meet you, man. You're kind of the man about musical town. You work with The Weeknd, Queen Latifah, so many people. Now, you, of course, with Andy Grammer. How did how did all these zigzag connections happen, man?
Oh, Derek, you're too kind. I'm feel really, really blessed and really lucky because um, I happened to be doing. I got out of college with music, which now
Yeah.
that's a whole nother story. Because if we were doing college over again, I might, especially in today's day and age, I might tell somebody to go a different direction. But you know what I mean. So I did
Yeah.
college, and then there was one dude in LA. Oh, hey son, how can I help you? Okay, how about you step off? Sorry, guys. That's one of three little ones. I
Oh,
apologize.
how cute.
Um, so there was one dude in LA, one cat named Barry Squire,
Yeah,
and
man.
it was weird. At least this was in the late, like early 2000s. This was the dude for some reason. I'm not sure why, but
Okay.
Barry Squire was the guy that you had to get on his call list in order to get an audition for decent gigs.
Right.
Um, and it was one of those things where a drummer friend of mine said, yeah, here's the number. And it was only passed around, like this was before social media. Somebody would just pass this guy's number around to the next musician.
Right.
And they wouldn't pass it to just anybody, like, okay, if you can handle his auditions, then we'll pass it around. And
Right on.
so the auditions started, but honestly, he was hard to get a hold of. It was not like I left him messages and messages and messages.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I don't feel like I'm that tenacious anymore, but apparently I was. And eventually he calls you back eventually, and he'll throw you on some like rinky dink audition with some really, really low budget, probably ain't gonna go anywhere thing, but kind of wanted to fill you out. So I did that
Right
a few times. He's not always there. At the time, this Barry wasn't always there, but he finally did show up and he saw you in person, and that was always a good sign. So I auditioned for a bunch of random stuff, man. I auditioned for Mariah Carey.
Okay.
I auditioned for and almost got it, which was crazy because it was way over my head. But at the time, I auditioned for Manhattan Transfer.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah,
My
that was cool.
faves.
And they're incredible. And
They
I was
are.
only in my early 20s.
Right on.
And actually, because of it, though, I still keep in touch with the drummer, really,
Right
really,
on.
that they currently use. So I got to do a lot of auditions. Some went for absolutely nowhere, and like people that you never even know or you never made anywhere. One of those guys who was like the low budget dude on Barry Squire's totem pole was Andy Grammer. So I auditioned for this cat in Pasadena, low key, small. Some auditions were more, put together than others. This one was small and low key, and I remember having a good time. And a lot of those things, which I would encourage somebody out there, if you're doing these types of auditions, man, I learned late in the game that a lot of it has nothing to do with me, like nothing to do with my playing. Sometimes nothing to do with like not taking anything personal. That took a while, to figure out
Yeah.
as an artist, as a musician, as a player. Where
Cool.
when you go in there and you're like, oh, I nailed that one, and you come out and you just never hear anything ever
Yeah.
again. So I hope that encourages somebody because I feel like it's just like doing stuff with acting and film, which my family has done a little bit, and myself, and sometimes they're just looking for a certain thing. They're like, I'm sorry, this dude's eyebrows are too thick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it could be the stupidest thing and had nothing to do with how you play or what
Right.
you do. So once I actually got over that about myself, it helped, and then made auditioning so much more peaceful because it could
Right
be
on.
stressful. You know what I mean? So
Sure. Sure.
yeah, so I auditioned for Andy. His friend from college was a bass player, and I thought for sure he's gonna get it because they're homies. Turns out there was this young up and coming girl on the road who he auditioned for named Kobe Calais, who blew up and took him with her with that
Okay.
with a couple of her hits that just shot out of the water in early 2000. So then
Right
I
on.
left me as the runner up, and it's been working. It's been a slow, steady climb. Started from the bottom. Now we're
Good.
here at top of vibe.
Yeah. 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 That's a beautiful story. Are you from Cali?
Yes, I'm from Northern California, Bay Area.
Oh,
Came
okay.
down
Okay.
to LA to go to college. Met my
Right
wife
on.
down here and stayed in the area, and then it made the
Right.
most sense, of course, to be here.
Right on. Nice. Nice. That's a great story, man. That's it. It's I'm sort of living vicariously through all the circuitous moves you made, and that's beautiful. What gear do you use, man? Do you use a radius? Or you use a stand up for your
Oh man,
bass?
I use kind of in the gigs around town, which I still do. Well,
Yeah.
right now gigs happening around town, but when they were still happening around town, I use kind of like just having tools in your toolbox, you know, whatever call
Yeah.
for. So
Yeah.
I love. It's funny because actually having this conversation with NS is getting. I can already feel my spirit wanting to pick the upright back up. I can feel it, but my heart and my voice. You know, people say certain instruments kind of sound more like them than others.
Yes. Yes.
I actually feel like my voice is an upright sound when I'm trying to get my thing across, and when I hear bass or whatever, that's the
Yeah.
tone I hear. But being a lefty was very difficult to find an upright bass. So in college, actually, through my sweet sister, she gave me a grant and helped me get a kind of a decent middle of the road right-handed starter bass.
Okay.
And then I took it to bass work, some famous Lisa, her name is, famous bass luthier in LA who works on uprights. Right. She flipped it for me.
Okay.
As best as possible on a college budget that I could do.
Yeah.
So it got me through. Like I played in the orchestra with it, and it got me through. But it didn't really have the tone that it should, because the main reason was the sound post was on the wrong side. So my low notes didn't really
right
like it should have. Right. So everything else sounded decent, but once I got anywhere in 100 hertz, it was kind of sad. So I finally got rid of that. And actually my next upright option was NS for me anyways. And that actually turned out to be a beautiful thing, because at that time I started getting pop gigs more, and they would be like, do you happen to have one of those things? But we got to go to Texas. And I'm like, oh, no problem. I saw somebody, forget who it was, probably another NS guy I spoke to on a chat about how to travel with it. And I got mine, like a lot of people probably, in that like ski case.
Yes.
Snowboarding case. They have it, and it fits perfectly for the NS stuff. So I went a couple of tours. It depended on the gig. So one time with the random thing I think I did with Queen Latifah, we needed that upright. With Andy, one whole tour, we used it a lot because it was more of an acoustic sessions vibe. But man, I also play the Hoffner. I love Hoffner. They've always been really kind to me. And then on electrics, I've been playing a lot of Kiesel carving basses, or they're now called Kiesel. I haven't tried the NS electrics, mainly because they haven't had any lefties laying about, which is completely understandable. So pros and cons about being a lefty in our world. But yeah, that's some of the instruments. I like radio engineering stuff for most of for DIs and stuff like that. I use Dunlop strings. Yeah, what else? I don't know. I like our Groove Gear stuff is cool. I've been a great family friend to the Groove Gear company for quite some time. Cables, I like two companies. Cordial Cables, which is kind of new on the scene, doing really well.
Yeah. And
also, I had also been working with Clock Cables out of Germany for a long time.
Okay.
Really great.
Yeah, it's really neat to, I won't say talk shop, because I don't really talk a lot of shop, but to hear shop, because I'm a cellist, right? Or at least that's how I kicked off. That was the greater amount of professional hours for me up to a point were spent on cello, and my whole other things, I do a whole bunch of different things, were kept in, sort of on the back burner.
Yeah.
So when it comes to my bass playing, because I was trained classically, I'm into like tone production. So I don't, whatever the NS comes with strings, I use those strings.
Oh yeah.
I haven't until now been thinking about investing in effects like pedals and stuff. It's weird. I listen to a whole, much like you, a whole prism of different types of music. And I happened to go on this Parliament Funkadelic kick recently.
That's all. That's all effects.
Oh, you dig? And so I heard this bass line to, what was it, Motor Booty Affair, I think. And I was like, And I just sat there because of course I heard it when I was, I guess, 13 or something. So I just sat listening to it, and I'm like, that's really hard to freaking play. That's to make it sound, sexy. You dig? Now I've got to remake this tune. So I started thinking about all the effects that Parliament used. So now I'm going to get into that looping. I'm going to do all that stuff. But at first, what I do, I guess, how would I say this? So I am a cellist and a bassist, but all of that feeds my head as an arranger and an orchestra. That's really where I feel the most comfortable. I can take any tune and arrange it for any other ensemble, or I can.
I'm gonna need your help soon. This is beautiful.
Hey, I'm here for you, baby.
I could probably do that, but it would take me 2 months, and you could probably do it in 2 days. So
I'm pretty quick, yeah. But I look, there's a certain sound, so you do a lot of pop and a lot of glorious, popular stuff. My specialty all my life, even when I was a younger cat, is old stuff from like the 40s and 50s. So like literally the pop tunes from back then.
Yeah.
That sound, like they're in a storage cabinet now because they're so old. But if we could travel back in time, Duke Ellington's Cottontail or Sophisticated Ladies, those were pop tunes, you dig? And I remake those. That's my wheelhouse. I just hear that stuff. I just recently, my album opens with my last album opens with Basie's Every Day I Have the Blues, which is my favorite big band chart. And I spent like $85 and got the chart, and I was transcribing. I was like, why don't I just do this by ear?
Yeah.
And it took me 6 days because the harmonies from that's 57, that recording that I went by, they're sort of proprietary. I mean, if you get the inversion of something wrong, it's no longer bassy. So I decided I don't feel like transcribing it. So I did the whole thing by ear. And I'm like, and here's the catch. It isn't the intervals he used, but I can fool the listener to thinking it because when the saxes do something inverted, I jack with the levels. So I duck one sax behind the other. So to your ear, it sounds like bassy. You dig what I'm saying? It's weird. It's like, maybe it's like speaking Spanish, but you're from a different place. You're not from, you're not from Spain. You're actually from Ecuador. So you inflect it differently. So that's my wheelhouse, man. And I could do that all day long. Recently I was I was listening to Samba's, and I forget the cat's name right now, the guy who wrote One Note Samba, and famous guy, his name slips me. And I was like, oh my God, listen. When I sat down to the keyboard, I was like, oh wow, what's going on with this voicing? But because I loved it so much, in about 3 hours, I was totally fluent. And I don't know how that happens. I just let go. I'm like, there's One Note Samba with a little bit of added stuff. I start tweaking the melody, the harmonies and whatnot. So when I build my arrangements, I build the orchestra around me as the bassist. I've figured that out because I don't always start with the bass. I build the orchestra because as a bassist, we're vibing off everything else. So I've got to build everything else. So then when I finally lay the bass line, it's like moving in and out of the tapestry. You know what I'm saying? So
that's beautiful.
Yeah. So the reason I thought of that is my circuitous motion is through my arrangements, as yours is with these different stars. You know what I'm saying?
It's a trip because I feel like it's harder to pinpoint mine as musicality sometimes. Yours is like, oh, that's a skill, that's a thing. Mine is different. Mine's more at least I'm growing to know now, is that mine's more like character traits. And can you hang in a bus with a bunch of random people in a 2x4 foot space or whatever?
That's important. But as a music director, no, you're very much doing the same thing. You're overseeing all the ingredients of the music. Yeah.
And it's happening in real time, like as opposed to maybe how you're rolling, where you can you can set it down, play it back, blah blah blah. Sometimes it's happening in real time. and then trying to make it be fun at the same time is always
Sure.
hard. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I mean, sure. For me, yeah, I mean, I toured a lot with the orchestra. I was principal of a bunch of orchestras as a cellist, and then soloed with several. And then I played in a couple of really groovy chamber groups. I've got a chamber season I run down here in Florida.
Nice.
Worked with a lot of cats there, and so it's interesting. In about I guess it was 2003, I had this. I put an implant in myself, like Inception. I said, "Hey, Derek, it's time for you to be a producer now." And up until that point, I hadn't really produced anything major. I just hadn't, But I said, you've done all, because when I lived in Houston, I was out in Houston for 7 years. That's when the public started knowing I could do classical as well as jazz as well as anything else. When you're coming up classically, it's kind of hoity-toity, a lot of the patrons, and they don't want to hear Mingus mixed with Mahler. They just don't dig it, and so I had to be like really reserved about letting the cat out of the bag. But Houston is so hip and so sexy that after a while I started doing half classical and half jazz concerts with filling in sax parts with cello lines that I'd write out, and it was a really groovy thing. And I don't know. I decided after doing all that, I was getting ready to move back to Florida. So now it's time for you to be a producer. And next thing you know, like Inception, that really germinated. And I formed a record label in 2006, started the project, which I finished later, 12 years later, which is my first official, self-produced multi-instrumentalist album. Did really well. And I just released my last one 2 months ago? Was it January? Yeah, November 4th. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I think I just like sitting back and creating stuff and calling people, go, hey, would you like to collaborate with me, and having them send me files, or I fly out. I just like that. Getting up, I was in a funk band. I played bass and did background vocals in a funk band when I was a teen, and I think, me getting up on stage and shaking my booty and whatnot, I'm like, not for me personally. I actually work with sometimes with this great drummer, Marty Morell, who played with the Bill Evans trio for 11 years. And he's like, Derek, you need to get out there and croon, because I can sing. And I was like, standing up like Frankie Boy, I mean, it would be neat. I'm going to describe it's going to sound great, but standing up in a crisp, chalk striped suit and singing, I don't see I could do it, but it's something I haven't done. And speaking real, how when you play, you're going to screw up sometime. It's just going to happen. And we pros know how to weave in and out of it and make the audience not recognize it.
Right.
What I don't know anything about is screwing up as a singer, and I don't feel like learning that. I don't feel like I know what it's like on bass, I know what it's like on cello, and I don't want to know what it's like singing. I don't want to feel. You dig? So I'm like, I think studio life is groovy for me.
See, this is funny, because it's a good connection Corey made, because I feel up until recently the complete opposite.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it is like Corey did this on purpose, I know, because I did up until recently. Now I got 3 kids, and this COVID drama has made it possibly a future reality to be more producer style. So kind of like you in 2003, I'm in 2021 going, you know what, maybe I want to, I know I do, but maybe that's the thing that I need to dig into. And I was talking to my wife, I feel really blessed. I've been everywhere. I hit every continent except Antarctica, because penguins don't need music down there. And all the 50 states, even Alaska, a couple of times. So I feel really, I'm not bragging. I'm saying I feel like I've really got lucky to be able to do that. And now I want to be home with my kids as much as possible as well. And so being into that, I'm going to channel what you just did. I want that to germinate in me now and start being that producer thing, so I can hopefully be home and continue to bring stuff into the household. But my personality though is pure performance. I just want to perform. I
understand. Yeah, I have that too. I'm a storyteller, and I'm very, very, I got this crazy amount of energy. at all times. Like no matter when I wake up in the morning, give me about 2 or 3 minutes, and I'm putting in the AirPods, listening to high power jazz arrangements at like 3:30 a.m. when I, crazy. Yeah, it's nuts, dude. And then sometimes if a tune, like all my life, the reason I've ever done arrangements is because I get obsessed with the tune. Mm. I mean, and I don't. They just come out of the blue. So for probably 30 years, I've been obsessed with basses. Every day I have the blues, longer actually, because I heard it first when I was like 10 years old. So 40 years. And I mean, well, and 1 o'clock jump, like the contrapuntal taps, like the way the instruments blend together. I'm like, listen, and the only way to get off on that is to get your hands dirty and recreate it. That's the only way. I can't just sit back and listen. I can't do it.
Then I want to go back. I'm gonna go and listen to this stuff immediately following this conversation.
It's like,
because I've heard it at some point. I kind of passed through it, but now it's fun I want to dig in like you're doing. It's cool.
Well, it's like it's. I mean, I've come as far. I own every type of vocoder talk box that's presently out. I mean, not every single one, but the big, the talker. I've got Electro Spit, which is the newest one. I've got the old tube thing. So, I mean, I picked up my talk box and did what Carl, whatever his name is, I forget his name, Bad Mama. I did that with talk box. I can do any era, but I could sit back in my pajamas and house shoes and run through 40 swing with no issue. And I never, the thing of it is, Zach, is I come out of the shower and I get an arrangement. I'm in the shower dancing, and immediately I get the telephone and I start sending myself voice memos to build my orchestration. And depending on how hot it is in my mind, I go out in my studio and just turn on the set and I get it going, but it's because I'm possessed by the tune. And I guess that's really the good thing, because it's in me complete. I just have to sit there and like, okay. And when it is that way, I'm like, okay, no, the saxes don't do this, they do that. I just did a remix. Well, I shouldn't say, because I'm releasing over the summer. Anyway, I did a remix of a certain song, and I'm getting ready to come out with it sometime. But it's like so pop. I'm like, how the hell did I do? How did I figure it out? I changed one interval. I'm like, that's it. And I've got another version of it. It's great. But I'm like, I did, so it's interesting to see how sounds fit together and how you can manipulate them. I just love doing that.
The way that would interpret sometimes for me on stage to help maybe make the connection even greater between us is I have to do that sometimes, which sounds funny, but with playback tracks compared to what's live, So that's one call that I have to make as my job when I have it, is to decide like what are we going to play and what are we going to let play.
Yeah.
So especially in the pop world now, there's a lot that people are letting play, and you're lucky if you were the artist or with a good music director or somebody or with a great sound engineer who's going to let y'all really play, which is pretty rare sometimes. A lot of times it's like everything's in the box on a playback machine and people just hit and play. So that's regarding orchestration and stuff. So I'll get a track. This might be interesting to some folks. I'll get a track from somebody like yourself who's orchestrated all this drama on something, right? Yeah. It sounds amazing. And then I got to decide, okay, what parts can the four of us actually play?
Right on.
Like, okay, I'll cover that bass line, but then who's going to cover the Moog bass? Okay, maybe we'll just leave the Moog bass in the track. Okay. Maybe if it's at the chorus, I'll play it, but then I'll get back to the bass, So there's a lot of muting parts, unmuting parts. Who's going to take that string line? Can the keyboard play the piano part and continue to play the string line on top? Is that an option or is that not an option? In the pop world, there's a lot of hours spent just trying to dissect, especially because pop songs currently are, I feel, heavily saturated with a lot of sounds. When you get these tracks from producers, you're like, dang, this thing's like, and you're like, well, okay, what can I play? What should we play? What's important? Sure. What, like you said, with that bassy stuff, what can you fool the listener to be like, oh, we took out 4 tracks, but this one instrument's covering it enough to where you can't tell that intricacy on a live stage setting, right? So
You
there's
know,
something where we just take it completely out of the tracks, and we
okay,
play it, and it gets the point across
sure,
in a 2,000, 3,000 seat auditorium. Sometimes you don't need all the little details that you can get on a CD.
sure.
So that's kind of some of the things that I have to do that correlate to the
Yeah,
intricacies that you're doing.
totally. Yeah, that's making that's making palette decisions. You're taking out certain colors because the colors that remain are satisfactory to the ear. You know, something I'm interested in.
That's the best way to put it.
Thank you. I know this is not a problem anymore, but I remember back in the day, artists would come on tour. You'd hear Prince. I can't believe that guy's gone. That was my man.
Mm.
But you know, 1999 exists in one tempo.
Yeah.
But when you hear the band live, that thing is usually kicked up like 8 notches. You ever notice this? Like, you know, you get people live, it's like, that ain't the tune. They won't change.
Too, man. Michael Jackson's live stuff was so fast.
It ain't the tune no more. I mean, I hate to say that, but yeah, and I think I've heard footage. Well, I heard the Jacksons way back when, but like, you take Billie Jean and do it 3.5 notches up. I'm like, man, I can't really moonwalk to that. I'd break my ankle. You know what I'm saying? And so that's controlled now, right? You just have the BPM. You got you can. If something came out on an Andy Grammer record and you're touring with it, you're matching up the tempi, right? You're not because I'm a cat, man. I'm a stickler. Unless I have to, I never change the key of a piece. Like if I'm remaking it, I wouldn't care if it's the hardest. Like I just redid Don't Know Much About This. What is it to? What a Wonderful World This Would Be. And it's in B major. It's the worst. It's the worst key. Well, think on bass. We're a C instrument. You don't want to play no damn B major. It's nothing but sharps. Yeah. But it sounds good in B. So I did what I had to do. I'm like shifting all over the place. Let me ask you about that. Do you change the tune of a key, the key of a tune because it feels better live to do it than what you did in record? I'd like to know that.
That's a great question. Yeah, that's a great question. That's a very current pop question that is relevant because you won't be surprised, but folks may be surprised that most of these pop singers, because they want the energy at the top point of their register, they'll record the song as high as they can get it, at the top. But and so this has happened to us, including Andy, a couple of times where this song comes out, and we're ready to play that song. Like I said, we go through the process of what instruments we're going to play, what we're not going to play, blah blah blah. And then I'm now getting into the habit of having it ready in the key in 1 or 2 half steps below.
Okay.
And we recorded it in because oftentimes, yes, it could be hit at that register, but you know how it is with vocals at a certain registers, the energy is better, right? So he's always trying to get to the top of his register because the energy is pretty hot right there. But imagine after an hour-long set and you want to put that hit song at the end.
Right. And he's tired. Yeah.
You know, it's not gonna happen. So I've learned now to get ready to have that a couple of steps down because depending on where it is in the set, that has a lot to do with us anyways. Currently, it depends where it is in the set. If it's at the very beginning, maybe he can do the original key if he's warmed up, right? Yes. But there's even been times where at the last minute being like the day of or something like that, where he's like, can we bring that down? Like, I'm not feeling it, you know, stuff like that. So, but many of those songs at that certain points in the tune or at the top of its register. Yeah. And many people in the pop world will bring stuff down half step, the whole step. You'll hear it if you really were into the song and you know, cross-reference.
That's deep though, man. That means that you and your players have to bring it down, have to prepare it. Sometimes that's a big deal. You know, one of the tunes, I don't know why, but it's a classic. Neil Finn, Crowded Houses, Don't Dream It's Over, right? Mm-hmm. It was originally in E flat. Then Sixpence None the Richer comes out and does it in F. And I remember the critics were like, why'd you do this? I love it, and I love both of them. They're two different feels, but the critics were like, why'd you do it in F? You didn't really do anything different. I'm like, au contraire. F is a bright, happy thing, and it's, you know, Leigh Nash singing it, so it's a lady as opposed to
E flat, which is dark and pastel, and it's like it was goth before goth was out. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I remember a girl broke up with me over that tune, so I got like weird, depressing connections to that tune. But that's a tune that I've arranged and recorded, Zach, probably 16 times, just because I have a bunch of different arrangements of it going on in my head. So yeah. And it feels different. Recently, for the first time, I recorded it, multiple cellos in E flat. I was like, huh, it feels totally different. It flows like a body of water. In F, it's like pistons in a mag race car, man. It's different. Just the difference in vibe. So I was very interested in you guys if you change keys or not.
Yeah.
Well, there's something I was going to say about that too. About I don't remember what it was right now, but yeah, it's interesting when keys have to be changed or tempi or stuff like that.
Yeah, we change the tempo. So oftentimes regarding tempo, so key change in the pop world, for instance, this is an example like Ariana Grande. She's always pushing hard and hitting high notes, and in every song that you hear on the radio, she does that. But there's no way she can do that for 60 minutes straight in a show. So like they might pick and choose which songs they want to bring down there. But tempo, we often like that you were saying with Prince. We try to. I'm always more like you. I'm like, let's not push this song any faster than it has to be. I played it a lot in the pop gig scene, around LA. What do they call that on the East Coast? They call that something totally different in Berkeley. I have friends in Berkeley. They call it basically top 40 cover bands. I forget what they call it over there.
Yeah.
And man, everybody pushes all these songs so fast, and I could just see Michael Jackson rolling over in his grave, pissed off if somebody plays "Beat It" one more time at that tempo.
Well, why? Like, do you? Is there a reason why? Do they even know they're doing? Or because sometimes when you get your adrenaline going, you think you're in the right tempo, but you play it back, like, wow, I was so.
I think it's that in a live setting when you're at the party and energy's flying and you're the cover band that's supposed to keep it moving. Yeah. I think that's a lot of it, Yeah, but I'm mindful of that. I take that little gem that I learned from playing a lot of pop stuff in LA to the actual professional gigs, and I try, because there's certain tunes that you do in a live setting, kick it up a couple of beats, and it instantly feels better. So we're always trying to push the envelope. How fast can we take it before it starts to feel stupid? Basically. So many of his songs, in fact, is one of his old school big hits, "Keep Your Head Up," which I think is recorded on the radio at like 90. And it kind of feels dragged. We played it like 94, 96. I think we played it 96 sometimes.
Okay.
We push that thing because it does feel like it's lacking luster otherwise.
Yeah.
But on the radio, it sounds fine,
I suppose it also is when you're live, it's also the vibe of the audience. It's the venue you're playing in. I remember many years ago when I played a couple hits with Stevie Wonder in Miami, and that was like the greatest concert I played with a cat like that, because he like played his whole, he played everything he ever wrote up to that point, and they were in the original. The tempi were perfect. I was like, I'm like going back in time, like that's the exact tempo, and I'm sitting looking at him at the keyboard. I'm like, where is he grabbing? It's from here. It's from his Gaveza. You know what I'm saying? And the bassist was off the chain. He would ramble. The floor was rumbling. Yeah. And I'll never forget. I look over at him. He points at me. I'm going to tell you.
Let me jump in about that bass player. I've met a lot of cool people and a lot of artists and stuff like that. And I don't normally get nervous or whatever to meet somebody. Just keep my cool because it all comes around, Sure. Nate Watts is the bass player. Just speaking of it, you got a chance to play with. And I met him in NAMM about 4 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I almost soiled my pants when I shook his hand. I ain't gonna lie. That was the one cat. And then I remember in the moment going like, oh, I'm freaking out right now. I am internally about to combust right now. I'm talking today. It was really, really funny. But you're right. Stevie Wonder is one cat that really keeps, I've got to see him live, and he really does keep his tunes pretty much original tempo, which is
yeah. And the vibe, it was also at that point, we're talking the 90s, this was, his technical arsenal, like the headphones we wore and the everything that we used to produce his music was upscale. Like it was the greatest production equipment I've ever worked with. So I mean, everything was mixed in your headphones, so you were hearing like a perfect mix. So you blend it right in. And when we did Overjoyed, it was something else. It was amazing, you know.
I can imagine as a string player, that song must have been beautiful to play.
Oh, dude, it was funny. I remember a cat sitting next to me, who for some reason wasn't into it. So we're getting ready to, he's practicing Vivaldi. I'm like, bro, this is Stevie. What? Let's forget, you know, this is 1700. Let's get into this right now. And another artist who will remain nameless, but a big time dude came to Miami as well. And I remember by comparison, his music was about to split my ear. Like it was the worst experience because there was no mix. I was playing, couldn't hear myself. You know, and it was like an hour and a half thing. I was like, oh my God. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Back to that gear conversation we were having earlier. I'm more like you as well. I'd rather just pick something up and play it and it sounds fine. I don't want to have to tweak with it. I don't have that gift. It is a gift. I've been able to be on tour with a few people who can literally dissect an instrument, take it apart, solder it back together like live on stage before the show. And then like it works. Like there's no way I could handle that. I want it to sound decent from the jump, right? You know? So I feel you on that. But I was gonna say, what was I gonna say about Stevie? Something you said about Stevie made me think about that.
The mix or something.
Oh yeah, the mix. Yeah. So in my world, that's everything. The mixing engineer, the monitor engineer. Yeah. That completely makes a world of a difference. In fact, as I've gotten further into it, I would put more money towards those players on the team than some actual players on the team, especially in the pop world, because if the keyboard player isn't cutting it, the truth is you just put the track back in there.
Sure.
Right? But which is sad, but true.
Oh, but it's true.
Same thing me. But the sound, because especially people are expecting it to sound like albums, the monitor engineer and the sound engineers I've learned have been the world of difference. Monitor engineer who, like you said, you can put the cans on and instantly it sounds like, oh, I can work with this. You know, I can do something with this. That's one thing. And then when the front of house is being portrayed as it should, that's a new level that I'm trying to get into understanding, as well as even how some of those front of house boards work, because I can help talk the lingo. Because a lot of what I'm learning is artists are expecting the music director to make it sound like the record. And you're like, hey, that's not, normally you would think to yourself, that's not my job. That's not, you know, but now, so I lean heavily on that front of house man to be like, hey, how's it sounding, man? Does it sound like the record? Because you're really in control. I'm actually on stage. And what it sounds like in here and what it sounds like on the stage is a completely different world than what they get, you know? So that's very important.
Let me ask you this, you know, I mean, and it affects, if I play a Beethoven string quartet, how would I say this? There's the way you hear what should happen in your head, and then there's real-time execution, where if I'm playing in a gigantic 1,500 seat hall, if I'm playing bum, boom, 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 bum, boom, 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 in order for them to hear that in the back that way, I've got to go bum, boom, 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 bum, boom, boom. I've got to play it with nice energy. But if I play it at the tempo my head hears, it sounds really rapid out there. So it's about making love to the sound around you, taking into consideration you know, hopefully, you know, I'm blessed to have a really great instrument that sounds that, you know, that's really reverberant. But, you know, I guess what I'm saying is your tempos, what you have to play too, does depend on the size of the hall, right? I mean, and let me
no, not necessarily. So what this is another good Corey contrast he's made. The Corey contrast. I'm officially dubbing this contrast session. Another good contrast he's making is what you're talking about is not purely acoustic, but predominantly acoustic. versus what we have to do is strictly like, it's all digital. It's all, we're hearing everything in our ears, like hard sealed, closed in ears, no wedges and no monitors on the stage anywhere. And if it goes back to the first place that comes to mind is in Chicago. There's a spot called Ravinia, and Ravinia is like a outdoor festival vibe, you know. But they have to delay the speakers to get it to go back that far. So all that really depends on the knowledge of the front of house engineer.
Okay.
It's like an amphitheater type of vibe, and it goes way out deep, you know.
Yeah.
So then he's got to know the time delay in order to get it to sound.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm speaking of, because the tempo you're doing on stage is going to feel completely different to the person in the very back of that theater. Wow.
But there's actual calculations that the front of house engineer, which again, why we got to lean heavily on that cat.
Yeah.
Because there's calculations that he needs to make. And I remember learning them actually. I took some courses about it, so I can understand how it works, but I couldn't even begin to do it. But there is calculations they have to make, so we can always play the same tempo no matter what, and then the time delay will catch up. So they've actually put speakers that are 100 yards away, X amount of milliseconds behind, you know, so it all sounds like it's impressive. It really is. That's
really deep. Yeah, that's incredible. I wonder what they did back in the day when they didn't have such things. Or here's a good question: for how many decades has that front of house person been responsible for that type of stuff you're talking about? Was that happening during the Beatles?
Mm-hmm. I believe time delay on speakers, yes, but that would be hard in acoustic situations, because time delay on speakers, I think it's something that they've had the ability to do for quite some time. That's a great question. But I thought it was something that they've had the ability to do for as long as the digital era has been around.
Right, that's the answer.
But in an acoustic environment, I mean, that's why acoustic shows like a string quartet can only be so big.
Yeah, to be effective, right?
Before it to sound good, it can only be so big of a hall, right? Before it starts to sound, you know.
There might, and then there came a time, I even remember when, you know, when you play at Carnegie, once upon a time when people played at Carnegie, I'm talking about decades ago, they didn't get mic. You just come out with your $7 million Strat and you just cranked out the decibels. People are like, oh, that's God on stage. Now they got pencil mics and stuff because you can't play loud enough. The halls are too big.
Exactly.
And you know, one of the cats, I don't know if his Amati was made in 1711, but I mean, you know, it ain't gonna produce but so much time. When it was made for chamber halls. So they call it chamber music. It wasn't made to play at Carnegie Hall, which looks like a freaking desert until you get out to the lip of the stage and then the audience begins.
Right.
What an intimidating space that is, right? So
that's actually why the NS, getting back to the homies at hand, the NS stuff has been cool because it's allowed upright players or cello players or any violin players. Actually, I just ran into another good friend. Oh, what's his name? Danica, who plays violin. She's incredible. Okay. Anyways, to be able to pull that kind of stuff off without having a professional front of house engineer. Because if you have a pencil mic on an acoustic instrument, or any mic for that matter, an acoustic instrument, and you're in a big hall and you have a professional front of house engineer who knows how to time delay the existing speakers to the back speakers, you now can play chamber instruments and take that all the way back there. And it looks like it's bowing in real time, right? Because otherwise what would happen is you would bow and then the dude in row 300 in C would hear something and then like 5 minutes later see the bow. So that's how they're able to pull it off. But with NS design instruments, now you're getting the kind of a best of both worlds, right? So now you don't have to deal with that acoustic time delay and trying to figure that out. Now there's still a time delay for the sound for the location that you're in.
Sure.
But it makes front of house guys their job a lot easier. And one thing I noticed too, back when I was playing my stand-up electric with NS a lot, was it did, even if there was times where people would argue that the tone isn't always as good as full-bodied uprights. And I would say, sure, I feel that. But can your full-size upright do do what it needs to do tonal wise and hit all these masses of people, right? And that was always hard without it feeding back. That's a major issue.
Right.
Without it feeding back, you got to crank that mic. You got a little compressor mic, you know, close to the bridge, and like, but you got a drum set on stage behind that. That's what's beautiful about the NS stuff is you can pull off the similar tonal properties without having to deal with the feedback that's coming from the drums playing over here, coming from the bass amp over here. And so it was very helpful for me in my pop world because we had a live drummer really going for it. We had all this stuff. We had a guitar player with amp on stage, like cranked up. The feedback drama as a front of house engineer, I could only imagine just trying to get all the tone out of it and cranking it up before it starts to sound like boo-boo. So I know there's a lot of pros and cons that people have versus this version of an instrument versus an acoustic version of an instrument. But it definitely has got their place, and there's a reason why. And that's, for me, that's one of the main reasons. It's like a guarantee. You're not going to have any feedback. The front of house engineer is going to be able to get what he needs out of this instrument and be able to get the point across.
No doubt. And not only that, the feel of an NS bass is so akin to a regular contra that you play it the same. And that's what it's about. Like the way you lay into the string, the way you release the string. The imitation of an acoustic bass sound is beautiful within it. I mean, look, you know, I tell Corey all the time, I discovered these instruments 25 years ago when I was at a bass shop, and I was like, let me just see what this is like. I was like, oh my God, the feel of this and the sound. And I started out a purist. I remember back many years ago, I said, I'm never going to replicate strings on a keyboard. I'm just going to, I replicate strings all the time. Come on, let's be real. Because I can wake up at 5 a.m. and I've got the Atlanta Symphony in my studio. If I want to hire that many people, I'm out of X amount, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So you get you some good samples. Do they sound, well, I was about to, you know something? You know what you're doing with string samples? They sound like some string players, man.
Oh man, I'm always really impressed with people, what they can do with string samples. I'm really impressed.
As long as you know what you're doing. But back to NS, I mean, the other thing is, and this, you know, starting out a purist, sure, at first I was like, I'd rather play this on a real stand-up, but I'm able to do virtuosic passages on an NS that would shred my hand bloody if I tried it on a stand-up. You know what I'm saying? And it, you know, and so there's no diminishing the quality of sound in an NS. It's all thumbs up for those instruments. That's why I've got two of them. I love it. I love the sound of an NS. Truly love it. And I'm doing bass stuff all the time, and I'm never thinking that really doesn't sound like a stand-up bass. Yes, it does. It has the thump, it has the tone, it has enough twang to where, and not too much twang where you can be like, oh yeah, there's no body in that thing. No, I think it's groovy. They're wonderful. I love the sound. That stiff response where the string doesn't give too much. Oh, forget about it.
So beautiful. I need to get my hands on one of the big boards. I got the I can't think of it right now, the low one. I need the CR. What's it? The CR.
The CR5, CR, yeah. I've got the EUB6 now, you know. So yeah. And I'm still, it's really weird because I'm a subsonic guy. So I love low, like all the time I'm going for low stuff. Now I got this high C string, and that's a whole world that opens up that I'm still discovering. I just did just last night, I think I just did a Brahms set of variations where I was playing all the registers. And I'm like, okay, I see what it's infinite what you can do with that thing. You've got 6 strings, dude. You've got high, you've got low. So the world is there to just open.
That stuff's always been made so well, man. So well. And the people, of course, so kind.
Yeah. No, to be a part of the NS family is groovy, isn't it? It's a groovy thing. Man, look, I have enjoyed it, man. Yeah, I've enjoyed getting to know you, man, and to hear about your stuff. It's kind of inspiring for me, man. You know.
Likewise, because COVID over here got me tripping. You know, trying to decide what else I need to do with my life.
Yeah, do some things. You turn on your stuff. I see your little keyboard back there. Get at it.
Yeah, man. Between having 3 little ones,
Yeah.
and the non-promise of what might pop music come, like what might come in the pop world,
Right.
it can be very disheartening and downright depressing if I dwell
Yeah.
on too much about what may be. So it's great to talk to you because I feel from you, like because I'm the performer, I'm waiting on the audience to put out my thing, right? To perform.
Yeah.
But what I like
Yeah.
about where you're coming from is like, man, I got this madness in my head that I got to get out with or
Wow.
without an audience. Screw them, you know, to some degree, which I think is beautiful. And I want more of that. I need more of that because
Thank you, brother.
so as I've been performing it since I was just a kid, it never stopped. So now that it's
Sure.
just been officially chopped off, I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
whoa. I literally
No.
feel like part of me, like my lower half, like you're looking at me right now in this Zoom call, is missing. Is not there.
Yeah. I
You know?
feel that it's crazy, and you know, but what has happened is that lack of performing has forced us all to go internal and to go virtual. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, I don't like the whole having to create chamber ensemble performances virtually. That's a drag, an absolute drag. I had to do one last weekend. I was in a funk the whole time having to do it, and that's
That kills the whole spirit
it
of
does.
the acoustic vibe completely. I got
You
a neighbor friend who's working on cello, speaking of, and whenever time I run into her, she's a young girl, she's in high school. Every time I ask her, how's the cello? She's like, our orchestra meets on Zoom and blah. I'm like, that is no way to have.
No, man. But you got to do. I mean, but the artistic spirit lives on, right? And with me, I do a ridiculous amount of like the acapella app bids where I'm harmonizing with myself, and they're all basically tongue in cheek because I got to take into consideration it's me times 10. So I'm like, let's not take ourselves so seriously. Let's experiment with harmonic tapestries and whatnot and have fun, but let's be real light about it. So yeah, man, I mean, it's a producer's world right now because there's so many things you can do virtually. And maybe when we get back out on the stage, we can take some of this we've learned virtually and take it out there, maybe do some more multimedia presentations or something like that. You know what I mean?
No, I agree. I also think it's a good time. That's a great point because I do feel like the level of multimedia expectancy is going to be much higher than it was before. People are so used to now to seeing things virtually like look good or presentations look a certain way. So definitely, I think you're absolutely right. The level of tech on stages is going to go through the roof.
Yeah.
Which is great for the audience. That's great as a consumer. That's wonderful. I think now's been a great time too for me being in the place that I'm in to be able to go, like you said, go internally and then put it out. So like spiritually, emotionally, mentally, it's been a great time for me to go internally. And I do feel like none of that is lost on the music. Whenever it comes back around to do so, I hope that I'm now like a better music director, a better leader, a better listener of sounds and people, and better respecter of persons because of the work that I did internally. So that's a lot of, honestly, more that I've been doing than music. I've been taking advantage of this time because I've been busy. I haven't had a lot of downtime to play into music with the kids being so young. So I'm like, well, what I can do is get into myself and figure out how I can be better about myself. So when I do get back onto a stage, it's a pure me. It's not me being egotistical, or it's not me trying to control this or that. So I am excited to eventually do music again, because I do hope that I'm now bringing a better me to the music scene than I was. But had not been for all this downtime, I would have never dug into that like I have. And not that I've attained anything, but I definitely feel more grown in many areas and more a sobering reality of how pathetic I was in others.
No, man, that I feel you on that. No, it's for those who can withstand it, because it's hard. The isolation sometimes can be hard. But for those who can take this time to go inward, it's been a great thing. I'm also a philosophy major, so it's all about going into and a philosophy and religion major. So I specialize in like the mystical tracks and whatnot.
Oh, now you're speaking my language.
Hey, I sort of sensed that. Yeah, no, I'm really, really heavy into that, bro. So yeah, so hey man, maybe as a last note for me, wow, this kind of heavy. So about 13 years ago, I discovered from this Hindu mystic, Ramana Maharshi. Maybe you've heard of the cat. He said the most important thing you could do is ask who you are. Who am I? And because he was so amazing that people would come from all over the world to go to this place, Arunachala in India. And he just stood up there and they asked him all these questions. And the books I have, he could come out with these answers, but you're like, oh my God. But he always had a sense when the person was asking the question, the answer to which would be beyond them. And he'd sit and smile and wouldn't answer them. But he wouldn't be hard. He would just smile and radiate because he knew that by uttering an answer was going to mess them up.
Right.
And he said, and they'd come to him and say things like, Swami, I'd like to levitate, or I'd like to be able to see many miles more than where I normally. And he goes, sure, understand. And he goes, just find out who you are. And if post that you still want to levitate, come back and see me. But I think if you want to, well, Swami, can you levitate? He goes, if I could or I couldn't, it would be due to my past karma. Anything you can do now is due to your past karma. He goes, so whether I can or I can't is due to that. He goes, but for you, what's most important? All right, so I started asking, who am I? Who am I? And I kept getting these superficial answers. Obviously, you're not just your mom's son or your brother's brother. Right. But I couldn't get to any answer. Like, and I kept going back. He goes, ask. No, he goes, really ask at a deep level who you are. I'm like, what am I supposed to get from this? And that 13. So it finally came to me about 2 years ago. You're nobody. You're nothing. And I'm like, I don't think that's the answer he wants me to get. Then I bought another guy who's named Nisargadatta Maharaj. And in it, he goes, yeah, you're going to find out you're nothing. I'm like, oh, you mean I got the answers? Like, right. Because, how do I say this? Oh God, this is huge. So the way one gets back to what people call the creator is by saying, what is he? You can't even say it's he, because if it's a he, he's not a she. And you're talking about infinity, so you can't do that. Right. It's neti. He's not this, not that, not a duck, not water, not a squirrel, not a dolphin. And if you could live long enough, you'd see he's not any of those things. He's the observer of all of them. The potential to be right, so that you're this beautiful zero, the capacity to be everything. You're like a singularity, the potentiality of everything. I didn't realize that's what I was supposed to get. But not only did I get that, I was like, my entire persona, what I present to the people is manufactured. The whole me that's talking to you now, I made that up. Right. The glasses I wear, the goatee I grew, all of that, I saw somebody else do it. It's an amalgam of many things I've seen. So there is no unique me. So therefore, every morning I wake up, I sign this metaphoric contract with myself going, this is who I agree to be. And there's been consistency for decades. So there's this seemingly unique Derek, but that does not exist. That's manufactured. And so since I can play with these different roles, bassist, singer, all it's just roles. And I'm comfortable with that because there is no I can do anything. It frees me up to feel that way because there is no real me. I have no you dig what I'm saying? It's crazy. That's
great, man. In fact, that's beautiful. That's exactly the type of place that I've been in. And with COVID as a performer, this has kind of forced you to figure out that if you're paying attention, if your awareness is there, because you instantly have to go, oh, wait a minute, I'm no longer a music director. I'm not a bass player. I'm not this. And then you go, well, what else am I not in reality? Well, then you realize all these other things that you're actually, and then you have to ask yourself, if you're paying attention again, well, then who am I? And the core of who you are really doesn't have anything to do with those other labels you wear and those things you put on, the masks we put on. You put on the mask, I'm a musician, I'm an arranger. We put on the mask, I'm a father. All these things, but the true core of who we are. And that's what I've been trying to dig into as well. And getting it all the way back to the music again is when any of us find out who that true person is, it makes us better for the next situation we go to. Because of the work you did, it made you better for this conversation with me today. And that's truly what the gift of being, in relationship with people is all about. And that's when you can take and have more awareness to everything that we do, which I think when you have that freedom, right, it's a bit of a freedom. It's sobering, one, when you were like, oh, I am shit, right? But then it's also freeing on one hand to be like, you know what? I don't have to perform for anybody because I'm none of these things really. This is just somehow these masks that keep putting on my face. Some of them I've picked up, some of them others have put on me.
Yes.
Right? But it is freeing, you know, it's very freeing to be like, you know what, I'm just gonna make my own music how I want, or I'm gonna listen to this how I want, or I'm gonna play this how I want, or whatever. Just be trying to do it from a pure state, and it's always a better blessing for the next person. So yes, man, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, because it's pure. Then it contributes more mightily to the body of cosmic water, of sentient water, because it is authentically itself. It's not trying to be anything else, right? It's coming from that pure place of not trying to prove anything. It is beautiful. What a moment of connection,
it's a constant fight, not just let alone in life, but when you get into the pop scene, you know, that's just as you could imagine, where it's just like, be this, act like this, put this on, wear this, blah blah blah.
Yeah,
not like this. You know, put this. It's just that can be hard. So I again back to trying to encourage anybody who's listening, if that, I mean, you heard it from Derek, but if you're trying to go in a route that I'm going into, that I think all the more you need to start getting that self-awareness as soon as possible, so that way you're not shaken when stuff goes awry, or when you're not shaken when you don't get the gig, or you're not shaken when COVID happens, right? And the core of who you are truly isn't messed up, and that way you can still radiate the light that we are, you know. So I think music now is just giving us an opportunity to expand on the light.
Yes.
That we are within, if you truly find yourself. Yeah.
That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. I can't think of a better note to end on than that, brother. You know what I'm saying? That's beautiful. Thank you, man. It's such an honor to meet you, Zach, and to talk with you. You know, and be in touch, man. I mean, you need some orchestrations. I'm your man. You know, let me know.
Just dude, it's done. That's done. That is done. Where in Florida are you?
I'm in Winter Haven, so it's right between Tampa and Orlando.
Okay.
And even, you know, at my point, like my mom is 91. She lives with me. I'm her caretaker. So I'm not going to be doing any big traveling for a while. I mean, I used to do a little bit, and I have taken 2 or 3 day trips. I'm kind of gauging when I'm going to do that, not because of course you're getting older and not younger. So, but that's another reason why I've gone more the producer route, especially recently, because I mean, you know, that's where I'm always creating, and I'm a part of a couple of ensembles. But again, I've got chamber music festival that I do here, so I bring people in. But no, man, I
love Florida. Honestly, in fact, I was just talking to a friend about Tampa. I really dig Tampa. I'm not mad at that place.
Yeah, Tampa's all right now. I love Tampa.
Yeah. But, next time I'm in that area, if I'm ever there, I'm definitely we gotta hang out. I'll find you.
Absolutely. Sure. You're welcome to my crib anytime. And that's all I do every day is I just orchestrate, bro. I'm getting ready to go do some Ellington now. You know what I'm saying?
It's funny because there's a certain vibe. I've met quite a few great orchestrators, and there's a certain vibe to the personality, and I love it. It's something that is it excites me. There's a like, I don't care if I'm gonna eat right now. I got to get this orchestration out. Spaghetti can wait.
That's it.
That to me is so beautiful,
bro. When I was doing this big bassy thing I did, I'd get up in the morning and I was like, I need to go eat some sausage, but I'm into this. I gotta get this 7th chord. Forget about it. And it'll be 2 hours later. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so hungry. But you know, and then I sit down sometimes. I'm like, let me just do a little bit of orchestration. I'm like, hey, let me just do the whole tune because I'm in it now. Because if you turn off the set, hey man, you come back, those ideas might not be the same. You know what I'm saying? You got to get them out. You know, if I'm acting like a guitar, I've got to do it right now, because if I have lunch, the guitar might be out of tune, might be logy or something like that. You dig? Yeah, man. I can't wait to hang out, man. Thanks again, brother, for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Corey,